just realising recently how we sort of project our own. We sort of interpret somebody else through our own idea of what we think is going on, and you sort of start to realise how ridiculous that is, that you can't really know. Especially in terms of enlightenment, and if you don't know the way things are, it's impossible to sort of try and second guess where someone's coming from who has realised that. Probably just even not people who haven't realised it.
We have a very strong. It's that whole Shakespeare quote from Macbeth about tales told by idiots, full of sound and fury that signify nothing. We can tell ourselves that we've got this internal voice, this internal commentator, this John Motson that we keep explaining everything to us. Do we ever sort of think, well, actually, does he know what he's talking about? We assume so much. People project all the time, and I think one of the great things about practicing mindfulness properly is that you learn so much about yourself, your own motivations, and what's going on within your own conditioning. And therefore you begin to get a really good idea of when somebody is criticising you, whether they are actually talking about something and there's at least a germ of truth behind it, and when it is just a sheer projection on their part, and when it's something they don't like about themselves and they're not willing to accept about themselves. So that's one of the things that mindfulness really does give you. And that comes from clearly knowing yourself, putting it in conventional terms. But understanding where the enlightened mind is coming from. No.
No,
just no. Because when you realise what it is, you realise that you could never have guessed it, and yet at the same time you realise that you always knew what it was. You can't get around that paradox. The only way of ending that particular question is by realising it yourself, and going through all these difficulties, and part of the path, and being under the guidance of an authentic teacher is dealing with all those kinds of issues about what you're projecting onto the teacher about expectations and what the teacher actually wants to hear from you. A number of people that I did it myself for a while. I did give it up, which is mentally going through the interview with the teacher, my teacher. And I gave it up because I'd go in and have an interview with my teacher, and it'd be nothing like anything I had sort of tried to, think of. And life's like that, we place these cast iron certainties onto life. It's got to be like this, and that's why we suffer so much, because life's so dynamic and conditions are always changing, and you can't control it.
The thing you were saying about going for interviews and planning it out, and I've had exactly the same experience, because you feel that you want to bring something to show, and you forget that the teacher's just seeing what's there now. I suppose I would imagine there's not that much interest in what's happened. It's more, well, what is the mind that's here now?
Oh no, there is interest in things that have happened. You do want the student to talk about their meditations and what's going on, but you're not. I think the biggest help for anybody is to understand that the teacher is never judging you as an individual, your worth. Because, well, as I was talking about earlier, the teacher sees you as just an expression of of life. But the teacher is very interested in what you say and what you don't say, and the way you say it and the way you don't say it, because it's just waiting and finding out actually where the bias is, where the wrong notions are, or alternatively recognising, because when somebody's on the right track, even though they might use the most strange language, there's some, because you've already been through that, you empathise with it. You recognise that, oh yeah, that's actually the way. I had one woman talking about a particular stage in meditation where it felt like she was in an earthquake, because she had been in an earthquake in Los Angeles. And I've never been in an earthquake in Los Angeles. I've never been in an earthquake, but I knew exactly where she was. And so you get to then praise and support and help the inspiration for the community to practice. So you're looking for where the errors are and where they're doing something correctly, to gauge where they're at and just to help them move on. I mean, that's part of my job, is to tell somebody if they're not doing something right, you're not doing that right. It's not because I don't like you. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's just, it'd be the same if you, wanted to learn how to draw. You'd expect the art teacher not to tell you when you make a mistake. That's how are you going to learn? But people take it personally, and I know that when it comes to meditation, because it's not an external activity, it's very much about me, what I take to be.
This is my
world. Yeah. So, you endeavour to be kind and to be courteous and friendly. You're not going to put up with any nonsense, but you find ways. As time goes on, you find better ways of putting across where perhaps something could be done better or differently. And if the student recognises that it's not personal, the teacher, it's not that the teacher likes you or dislikes you, he's just doing his job. Then the relationship can really, really flower and prosper.
It does take a lot of trust, doesn't it, and confidence in your teacher, because it's what you said earlier. If I bring a painting, and put it down on the table, my painting teacher can kind of go, "Oh, you should have done that," and it might be a bit sort of, feel a bit like an attack, but that's just a painting. It's fine. But to come and bring your whole being to your teacher, and then to have to consider that maybe the way you're seeing your whole your intimate life is warped. It can feel like this is the only area I've got of mine that's true, that's intimate, and to accept that I might be seeing it wrong.
Yeah, but you came and sat there.
Yeah.
And if somebody doesn't have that courage and doesn't have that determination, doesn't have that sense of possibility and vision of what life could be, they're not going to bother. And the beautiful thing about the Buddha's teaching, because it's like that, it doesn't proselytise. It doesn't come knocking on people's doors saying you've got to. This is the truth. This is what you have to believe. The whole thing is based on come and see, investigate, explore, do it for a little while. Find out whether it's what you're looking for. Find out what kind of results you get, and then you get genuine confidence out of that. And it's not predicated on trying to prove your worth. I mean, that's a lot of what when the ego interferes with that relationship between the teacher and the student, it's that the student feels that they have to prove their worth to the teacher, and they don't at all. It's just not.
It's just one of the projections that you make, and I guess part of the training is to see through that. Yeah.
Because actually, what you find is that even if you had a really difficult interview with the teacher, and you left with a heavy heart, or I don't want to make it sound, but sometimes it does happen. But when you go next to see the teacher, that teacher is absolutely bang straight there and ready to receive, and just wants you to, and there is no residue. So if you were to walk in and say, Paul, I had that really difficult conversation last time with you, I'd be scratching my head going, what conversation?
Right.
Because I was just ready to receive now in the moment,
Which is, I find that actually a great thing, because it takes, sometimes in life, you might have a disagreement with someone, and then part of you's thinking, oh no, I've got to see them again next week, I'm fine with it
Yes.
now, but what if it's still, I've got to, but with your teacher, there's definitely, over the years, a confidence that, like, as you say, if something's bad one day, unless you bring something to the table, it's going to be all right.
And that's the hallmark of the unenlightened mind, is that there's the residue.
Yeah.
Whereas with the enlightened mind, there's none. So if we had a dispute in the morning about such and such, it just dies right there and then. It does not move on, because that life's not like that.
That must be wonderful. That
Well,
sense that you don't.
Of course. That's the point.